My good friend Waleed Shoebat is back in the studio with me today. Waleed is an ex-PLO terrorist that was transformed by the power of God, and now he is a lover of Israel. And at the risk of his life, he is talking about the dangers of Islam and why America needs to stand with Israel. He's an expert on the Middle East, a popular author. And Waleed, we're so glad to have you back with us. Welcome, my friend. But thanks for being here, Waleed, and thanks for the work you're doing. I know you're risking your life doing this, and we're very grateful. Just a quick overview how a PLO terrorist ends up loving Israel and the Jewish people.
In 1993, I began to read the Bible. So living in the Middle East, growing up under the Islamic culture, the Islamic education, from kindergarten all the way to high school, the ideology of Islam, the way we learned it, was to give our lives as martyrs in the end.
Where were you living, by the way, during this time?
Bethlehem, Israel. And in 1993, my life took a turn. And after living a life of terrorism, planting a bomb, ended up in prison. In 1993, my life took a turn. I was attempting to convert my wife. She was a Catholic. I wanted her to become a Muslim. So she asked me, why should I change my faith? And so I said, well, the Jews corrupted the Bible. The Bible is corrupt. The Jews are prophet killers. The Jews spread mad cow disease. The Jews put infertility drugs for the Palestinians. I mean, everything under the sun is always blamed at the Jews. So I began to read the Bible. I was fascinated with it. I began to look at Genesis 3:15. I will put enmity between you and the woman. And me and my wife were not getting along. We were fighting like cats and dogs. In other words, Satan hated the woman the most because she brings forth the seed of the Messiah. The Messiah is virgin born, born from a virgin. So the hatred of the woman was prevalent in my life. I began to see that my father's abuse towards my mother, the woman's status in the Muslim world, all these things, the hatred of the fascinated when I read Amos chapter 9, verse 15. I will plant them in their land, and no longer shall they be pulled out of that land. You know, that land issue was a major issue to us Palestinians.
Yes.
By the time I reached Joel 3, I will gather all nations into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Then I will enter into judgment against them. Wow. Why? It tells it very clearly. For the Gentiles basically have scattered my people. They have also divided up my land. God is into politics. God is into this issue of the land called Israel. Yes, we're trying to divide it, create a Palestinian state. So I began to see that the Palestinian state was a state of psychosis, was a state when you see Palestinian children, when the preacher is saying, what are your desires? And the children will cry out by the thousands, al-mawtu fi sabilillah, to die for the cause of Allah, to die for the cause of Allah. Then by the time I reached the New Testament, I began to see the words of the Messiah, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. So I began to see the opposite. I began to look at the issues of this Antichrist, all the things. I began to see that we were the antithesis of what the Messiah proclaimed. And the hatred of the Jews really was the hatred of God. You know, this is one of the most blasphemous things in the Bible is to deny God's edicts. If God makes an edict and we deny it, we're really blaspheming God. I saw myself as a blasphemer and nothing more. Whenever I prayed in my formal Muslim prayers, nothing was ever answered. Finally, I take my gloves off and sort of like Fiddler on the Roof, I began to talk to God, you know, straight on. He was always answering. That's right.
So why such an outspoken stance in support of Israel at the cost of your life, at the threat of your life?
When I did my prayer, I said, God, show me the truth. If you show me the truth, I will do your will in my life. I will do anything you want me to do. Those were my exact words. So in the Middle East, a deal is a deal. I made a deal. He showed me the truth. He showed me the way. I am the truth, the way, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. The Messiah said, if you attempt to lose your life, you will save it. If you attempt to save your life, you will lose it. The same goes with a job. I always attempt to lose my job, to tell the truth. You lose interviews, you get people hating you, but guess what? God has more avenues.
Yes.
The harvest is plenty, and the reapers are few.
Better to be a friend of God.
That is right.
Waleed, let's talk about some politically incorrect things, but the truth. It's politically correct to say that Islam is a religion of peace and love. when you go back to the Quran, it says something very different. Now, we find Moses, we find Jesus in the Quran, Elijah, and so on. So why would fanatical Muslims be killing Christians and Jews?
Because their Jesus and their Moses and their Abraham is not the same Jesus, and it's not the same Abraham. The Abraham as defined in the Quran is a Muslim. وَمَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُدِيًّا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا وَإِنَّمَا كَانَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا. Abraham was not a Jew or a Christian, he was a Muslim. So it is a Muslim Abraham, it is a Muslim Moses. From the Muslim perspective, Jesus was never crucified. God had no son. The Trinity is an anathema.
So not the Jesus of the New Testament.
Absolutely different, totally different.
And not the Allah is not the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, right?
His name is not Yahweh. His name is Allah. Allah was a god in Arabia way prior to the advent of even of Islam. It was a Babylonian deity.
Why is Islam not a religion of peace and love, as people are saying it is, very specifically?
The Bible is about Calvary. Islam is about cavalry. Just a few letters switched. Islam is a religion that Muhammad said very clearly, أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يقولوا لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. This is the exact words verbatim. I have been ordered by Allah to fight all nations until all nations say that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. The same offer that was given by Osama bin Laden, the same offer that was given by Ahmadinejad to President Bush in a letter saying, Aslim Tuslam. Declare there is no God but Allah, you will be at peace. As the whole world says, we must end the cycle of violence. No, we must end the cycle of false peace.
Yes.
By peace he will deceive many. Peace, peace when there is no peace. Peace doesn't live in a vacuum, Jonathan. Peace lives by truth and justice, you know. Justice for the Palestinians. What about justice for the Jews? What about justice for the Jews who have to build the wall? Israel removed the wall in Jerusalem. I remember in '67 war. I was there. You know, 6 days war, and Israel triumphed on the 7th day, Jonathan, paralleling the battle of Joshua and Jericho.
Yes.
It was the most amazing thing. These days, all scholars of the Bible say Islam plays a major role. Eventually, they're going to understand that Islam plays the most major role. Because if you look into the Bible,
clearly,
all the nations that God reprimands and destroys, all of them, no exception, they're all Muslim. You can argue maybe about Rush, or this is a big, long argument. I began to see the Antichrist of the Bible as the Messiah of Islam. Because the Messiah of Islam, or the Mahdi in this case, which both Shia and Sunni are awaiting, how do we recognize him as Muslims? He will bring 7 years of peace. When I read Daniel, who brings 7 years of peace? You know, he will come with a military from Asia Minor, the Turks, and the Persians. That's the Gog and Magog battle, Ezekiel 38. And Muhammad said, every Muslim shall go and join that army against Israel, even if they have to crawl through snow. He will attempt to change all the laws to establish Sharia law, Islamic Sharia law. Islam is not simply a religion. It is a constitution to be established throughout the whole world. You know, when they read Daniel, Westerners, when they read Daniel of the Antichrist, they think he is an atheist. It doesn't say that at all. What it says is extremely interesting. He shall neither regard the God of his fathers, the gods of his ancestors, and he will nor the desire of women. In other words, he doesn't honor women at all. That's exactly Islamic Sharia law.
Exactly.
Women has half the right of the man. Nor regard any God, for he shall exalt himself above them all. He is, basically wants to be the God of this world. But in their place, he shall honor a God of fortresses, a God of war. That's exactly what we were talking about.
Exactly.
Jihad is honoring the God Allah and advancing the God Allah by war, through war, to advance this foreign God. And
that is so clear.
And a God which his fathers did not know. And then look what it says. It says, thus, in verse 39, thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses. He will declare war against the strongest, mighty military countries in the world. We have two choices. We either stand with Antichrist spirit, or we stand with the Spirit of God. Believers cannot be on the side of Antichrist and the side of Christ at the same time. If God says, Jerusalem for the Jews, and you say, well, Jerusalem for the Arabs, which side are you on? you're on the side of Antichrist. You can't be serving Satan and Molech and serving God. You either serve God or you serve the adversary.
And what can we do about this?
What we can do is become active, become proactive. Don't complain. Don't sit there on the television and complain about what's going on in the media. Be proactive. Go out there and make the media. Don't respond to the media. Yes. Create the media. We can win this battle. If only the remnant, if only God's people will rise up and do something. God is not looking for numbers. David was not numbers. He was only a single person who went in the name of God and he, destroyed Goliath.